Taglines. Taglines are both fun and also terrible. They're very difficult because you're basically trying to take the entire essence of your work and your books and your brand and condense it down into one pithy line. They're very difficult, and most authors I know either hate all the taglines they've ever come up with, or they agonize and agonize and agonize and agonize over it for centuries. So I have some suggestions. I've thought about this a lot. And I actually have a step-by-step process for what you can do to develop and create a tagline that you really like and that really reflects who you are. Keep in mind again that taglines are something that change, and you might create one tagline that's perfect now and it changes in the future. I'll be honest, I've been using the same tagline for 10 years, but I create different taglines for specific books or for a specific series, and I always use the same process. So the first step is to make a list. Of what, you might ask? Great question. Make a list, but it should not be of potential taglines. Forget about taglines for a second and instead think about things that reflect you and your brand, your passions and your values, or your books and your work. List things that you like to think about, list out things you like to do, list out anything that helps define you as a person or as an author. If the tagline is for a book or for a blog, do the same thing, but replace you with blog. So make a list of everything that defines your blog as an entity. Make a list of things that define your book as an entity or your series as an entity. Things to consider, things that you could include in that list. Colors. We just talked about colors, so maybe it's the same colors that you just brainstormed for your brand. Or maybe it's something completely different. Maybe there's one color that you think really represents you or really represents your book or your blog. Color. Descriptions of your writing style. If you had to make a list, of a list of 10 words to describe your writing style, what would those words be? A few things that I brainstormed for myself: quirky, fast-paced, lyrical, descriptive. You might also use words like romantic or sweet or expletive riddled or angry. What 10 words would you list out to describe your writing style? You might also want to list out genre-specific words. So romance, paranormal romance, maybe avant-garde or noir or science fiction or urban fantasy. Genre-specific words, and these can extend, to subgenres. So you might pick romance, but you also might pick motorcycle romance, or you might pick cozy mystery romance, or sweet romance, or whatever subgenres. And for me, I wrote post-apocalypse with monsters, so post-apocalypse and monsters would both be on my list. But I might also write sci-fi with a twist, or sci-fi with a strong female main character, those types of things. You can also list out your own personality traits. So I might list out on there opinionated, thoughtful, obsessed with learning, driven, disciplined. These are all personality traits that I have, and I might add those to my list. Brand descriptions, things you already know about your brand. So I know that I have a blog, so I might write blog on my list of things. I know that I like to think about things and I tend to overthink things, so I might write overthinking, or I might write intellectual. I really like talking about the how-to of doing things, so I might write how-to on my list, or process obsessed. So anything that you think describes your specific brand. Also, anything that inspires you. And it doesn't have to do with your books necessarily, but just anything. I really like nature. I'm inspired by nature. I love clouds and sunsets and cats. I love the universe. I love pictures of NASA. I love the idea of space travel. I think about the moon probably way more than I should. So anything that inspires you, make a list of those things. This is, I think, similar to some of the stuff we talked about earlier in this. If you were trying to brainstorm your brand as a whole, anything that you included in there, you can also include in this list if you want to. So here is an example of what my list looked like when I did this. Universe, quirky, stars, space, space travel, astronauts, books, science fiction, science, trees, bare feet, planets, fiction, parallel worlds, humor, dirt, petrichor, rain, weather, leaves, seasons, hiking, cats, love, fur, writer, sun, green, screwdriver, reading, books. I put books in there multiple times. Unicorn, sheep, Oliphant, sky, clouds, flying, monsters, apocalypse, exploration, a new perspective, and upside down. So this is a list that I made, right? For me personally. And I'm going to put this in the text below this video so you can read through it on your own if you want to. So literally just a list of what appears to be random things, but that I think reflect me, the things that I'm interested in, and that kind of stuff. If you're having trouble coming up with a list, a couple things you can do: ask somebody, a friend, your mom, another writer, your spouse. Ask them. Don't ask them to write a tagline for you, but you can ask them to help you generate this same list of ideas. What do they think? Like, what words or adjectives do they think describe you? Do they think describe your books or your brand? You could also potentially post on Facebook. I actually think these posts are kind of annoying, but they can be really helpful, and I've actually done a couple. But a Facebook post that says, write one word about how we met, or write one word that you think best describes me, or if you've read my books, write one word or a phrase about how you think about my books. You can also go, if you have books published, look at the reviews, like what words are people using to describe your work. You can look at comments on your blog, anything like that, to help you sort of pinpoint how you might describe your work or your brand or who you are. But just make sure, as you're choosing words, if someone else comes up with them, make sure you agree. Okay, these have to be things that you truly, authentically think represent who you are, who your books are, or what they are, and what your brand looks like. If you're still struggling, do something else creative. Play a song on guitar, draw a picture, do some writing. Do something creative, and then see if that helps generate, get the juices flowing, so to speak. The other thing I did when I was doing this was I tried to remember stuff. And so I would go back into old journals and sort of look at some of the things I'd written in the past. I pulled out some old photo albums and I looked through pictures and tried to remember who I was in the past versus who I am now. Try to think about how I changed over time, and just used old memories to sort of jog my memory about who I am and who I was and how I've changed throughout the course of my life. And then I did mention writing, but just free writing is always a great strategy when you're trying to come up with ideas and trying to figure out who you are, and just brainstorming in general. Free writing is a great strategy. Now that you have a nice long list of words that you think describe you and your brand and your books and your series and things that you value and find important, the next step is to play with those words. So, for example, you could write every word on a different Post-it note, put all the Post-it notes on the wall, and just move them around. You could draw them in fancy lettering in a sketchbook, or you could put them in PowerPoint slides and look at them from different angles and upside down. You could make a vision board using the words that you found in magazines and cut out. You can make a word map. The trick here is to sort of manipulate your brain into slowing down and to experiencing the words individually, to let them sort of simmer and move around and let your subconscious mind sort of parse out any associations or feelings or thoughts that you might have about the words. I really believe that the key here is to not rush, to take your time, and to really, take a deep breath and let yourself think about the words deeply. As you're doing this, as you're playing with the words and moving them around, you can begin to eliminate them. Ask yourself things like, does the word feel right? Do I think it's boring or interesting? Does this word represent the whole of me and my brand, or just a piece of it? Do I like the word? Is there another similar word that might work better? You can use the thesaurus, for example. It's a great tool. What imagery does this word evoke? What other words do I think of when I see this word? And as you walk through this, get rid of anything that you don't like. Get rid of any word that doesn't feel quite right. Get rid of any word that is too jarring or sharp or doesn't really, represent all of your brand and all of you. And as you're doing the exercise, try to forget about what other people might think. Try to forget about, other people's opinions. It doesn't matter if someone else thinks that a word is cool or boring. It only matters what you think. Eventually, hopefully, you should take this big clump of words that you brainstormed and shave it down into just a few words, say 10. Don't throw away the other words, because you might have to go back and do this process all over again. But try to come up with just a few that really jump out at you, that really you think illustrate the core of you and your brand, and what you think. Now you can write a phrase. Use those words and try to turn them into a phrase. You might have to add the or a, articles. You might have to add a couple adjectives, or you might have to add a noun here and there, depending on what your list looks like, maybe an adverb even. But try to write a phrase. And don't just write one phrase, write as many phrases as you possibly can. Sentences, full sentences, partial sentences, just write phrase after phrase, sentence after sentence, and write as many as you can using just those words. Pull in adjectives, pull in adverbs if you need to, pull in articles if you need to. Maybe you need a few verbs. Do what you need to, but write as many sentences as you can just using those words. It can be really hard. Maybe you need to go back to your original list. So for example, let's say you need to add a verb and you had eliminated all of the verbs. Go back to your main clump of words and pull out the verbs if you need to. Go back and pull out some adverbs if you need to, or some adjectives. But try to stay within the subset of words that you created as much as possible, and try to only use the words from your main clump of words as much as possible, and only branch out if you absolutely need to. I personally could spend hours doing this over and over, and it can really take a while to hit on just the perfect thing. But when you do, it's just like magic, and it might happen really fast. Maybe the correct phrase, the perfect phrase has been floating around in your subconscious for a while, and you just haven't done the work to pull it out, and maybe you'll land on it just like that. But it might take a while. So just going back real quickly, I eliminated a bunch, and this is a lot more than 10 words here, but I have, it looks like 20 words in this. Universe, quirky, star, space travel, astronaut, books, science fiction, science, trees, bare feet, planets, clouds, flying monsters, apocalypse, exploration, perspective, upside down. And then here's a few sentences that I wrote using my subset of words. It's plural. Upside down fiction with quirky humor. Quirky books about parallel worlds. Flying through a universe of trees and monsters. New perspectives on the universe. Exploring the universe through upside down fiction. Kind of like that. Barefoot fiction, a new perspective on the universe. Or the tagline, which I ended up keeping, which is in love with the universe. You can definitely take as long as you need with this step. I recommend spending some time sleeping on it, thinking about it, adding new words, eliminating old words. If you hate everything that you come up with, it's totally fine. You can always start from scratch, or you can always pull in a friend to help, or a writer. And also remember that your tagline doesn't have to be forever. So you can come up with a tagline, you could put it on your website, and a month from now you could come up with a new tagline and put that on your website. I know I've talked about consistency a bunch here. I do think consistency is important, but sometimes you need to test something out a couple times before you find the perfect thing that works for you. Back in 2011, when I first did this process, I probably went through 6 different taglines before I ended up with In Love with the Universe, and that's what I've been using ever since. It's technically the name of my blog. I use it as part of my website. I don't use it everywhere, but it is a key core component of my brand that has persisted is the word I was looking for. It has persisted through the entirety of my process of developing my brand as an author and writing more books and all of that. So you are not trapped. You can keep a tagline for a while and you can replace it with a new one. Consistency is certainly important, but you don't have to feel trapped or stuck. Just take your time and really think about it, and pick one, try it out, and see how it feels. As you're trying to make a decision between, maybe you've got 3 different taglines that you kind of like and you're not sure which one's best, a few things that you can ask yourself is, which one of the concepts leaps out at you the most? What are the strengths and weaknesses of each tagline? Maybe it's too vague, or maybe it's too specific. What are the strengths and weaknesses? Why this concept? Like, why did you choose to go to this direction? Why is it important? How does the tagline relate to me, to my books? How can I expand this idea to encompass future works? Where am I planning on using the tagline? On my website, my banners, on my books, in my marketing materials, a tattoo. Is there any way I can make this tagline better? Why this word? Why this verb in particular? How can I change this? What's missing? What can I get rid of? Does it describe me? Does it describe my work? Does it clarify my brand? And I think this is really important. Does it add clarity or does it muddy the waters? Because you want it to add clarity and you want it to be key and just a phrase that really defines you and your work. And then, of course, the last step is to use the tagline. You might use it for 2 weeks and decide you hate it, and that's okay. You can always go back to the drawing board. You might use it for 3 years and decide, this tagline doesn't really represent me anymore. You might use it for 1 day. You might type it into your author header on your website and realize it looks ugly and you don't like it and go back to the drawing board. So you really have to use it at least once before you can decide whether if it's the right tagline or not. And you know what? If you need to sleep on it, please sleep on it. Maybe you need to sleep on it for a week or a year. Maybe you use a placeholder tagline for a little while. It's just something that's pretty close but not quite right. It's totally okay. It's all good. Do whatever that it is that you need to do. I want to talk about blurbs just for a quick second. They're a little bit different than writing taglines, and they're a little bit different than taglines. But an author blurb or a brand blurb should be basically like a tagline, but longer. If you think about blurbs, most of the time when authors talk about blurbs, they talk about them in the context of their books, right? And the idea behind the book blurb is that you want something that represents what happens in your book. It gives you a sense of the main character. It gives you a sense of what you're going to get out of the book, what the reader's going to get out of the book, and it gives you a sense of the main conflict and the main tension within the book, right? Your author blurb should do largely the same, except it should be about your brand. It should be a description of your brand, a description of what your brand looks like, and an explanation or a taste of what a potential customer or potential reader is going to find if they decide or choose to engage with your brand. At the beginning of this workshop, I talked a little bit about Under Armour and FedEx as two different companies with distinct brands. And so for looking at blurbs, talking about blurbs, I actually went back to each of their websites and tried to find some sort of blurb-like statement that describes and defines who they are. Now, this could be a mission statement, this could be a vision statement, but I think that a blurb goes a little bit further than that. And so I just thought I would quickly read to you what they have. So FedEx is titled Connecting People and Possibilities. And what they say is, connecting people with goods, services, ideas, and technologies creates opportunities that fuel innovation, energize businesses, and lift communities to higher standards of living. At FedEx, we believe that a connected world is a better world, and that belief guides everything that we do. And I really like this. It's clear, it's concise, and it's simple. It's not exactly a mission statement, it's not exactly a vision statement, and it's not a tagline, but it gives you a very clear and concise description of who they are as a brand. Under Armour's is a little different. If you go to their brand, about their brand page, they defined theirs more as a list of values, and I thought this was interesting as well. So there says, Under Armour is built on performance. That's their headlines. And then what defines us is our values. Our values define us, unite us. And then they basically say, they have like a short paragraph that says that their beliefs are the red thread that connects everyone at Under Armour. And their values are to love athletes, make things that make them legendary, stand for equality, united we win, fight on together, adversity fuels victory, create fearlessly, dare to lead, never follow, always connect, live at the center of the consumer's life, stay true, completely honest, perfectly imperfect, think beyond, better athletes in a better world, celebrate the wins, take time to take pride. And I'm sure that if I were to click on every single one of these, they have more paragraphs and more descriptions or whatever. But I also really like that format. And sort of like they have like 6 key things that define who they are as a brand. And they know what those things are, and they seek to achieve that. And then I also thought I should probably read mine. I am still working on this. I've changed it so many times, I can't even tell you. But here's what I have for right now. The universe is big, and no idea is off limits. The one thing I pursue, no matter what book or series or genre I'm working in, is the idea that every perspective is worth exploring. Whether that's my own perspective, the perspective of someone who is different than me, the perspective of the universe looking down on us, tiny humans, a long-lived tree gazing out at the world around us, or a minuscule atom trying to comprehend the vastness of everything. And that's currently the brand blurb that I am working with. I will say I don't think that a brand blurb is 100% necessary. If you don't want to write one, you certainly don't have to. Just like you don't have to write a tagline, or you don't have to choose your colors. You don't have to have a logo. I have personally found that just working on this idea and crafting it slowly over time has really helped refine who I want to be and help me pinpoint what direction I want to go in as an author and a brand. So if you're interested and you want to, I definitely think it's a worthwhile exercise.